All right, look at this beauty. We didn't just like mix chocolate in bread. We thought about how do you get the most out of chocolate. I know you're gonna be visually taken by these, but the smell adds a whole nother layer. It smells so good in here right now. Very excited to dig into one of those. This really holds its own against any pastry or any croissant in our case right now. I'm still messing with the heart because I think it could be the right way to go. That is excellent. We did something different this year with this bread, and I think it's by far the best we've ever done. I've been playing with chocolate cherry sourdoughs since the early garage days, and admittedly always like a little bit kind of holiday hungover in January and trying to put together, something unique or different. Chocolate throws its own variables when in dough, but we achieved something pretty cool this time. You can tell that the dough is super dark, so it's not that we just included chocolate and included cherries, which we've done in the past, fine bread that way, but this is a very chocolatey, very velvety, very rich experience, and there's a secret, and that's that we actually made kind of like a mocha and put that together in the dough. So like a nice cocoa powder with brewed coffee. Super pleased with how the trial's been going. We're gonna bake these off today. So we haven't really figured out our favorite scoring pattern, so we should try a bunch and tease that out. I'll go with a little rice flour for contrast on a couple of them to see. One of my favorite things to do with rounds is this mushroom style cap. It tends to pop up. We can try an X, which is what we do on the green olive loaf. We can try a triangle. Given that this is a Valentine's loaf, February special, we can do the classic heart. That seems to just make a lot of sense. I'll try the heart also without the rice flour and see what we like better. I'll try one bigger circle without rice flour. All of this at the end of the day is just for the aesthetic. The flavor is not going to be impacted one way or the other. It's just where do we want to land on this? And you always want the exterior work to reflect kind of the values you have on the inside, which are harder to broadcast. In this case, again, it's like a super intentional loaf. We didn't just mix chocolate in bread. We thought about how do you get the most out of chocolate? And it turned out to be coffee. In this case, we realized that coffee enhances chocolate, but doesn't, if used properly, doesn't actually come through in the end as coffee. So I wouldn't say that it's appropriate to say this is a coffee chocolate or a mocha. It's really like a chocolate cherry loaf, but the coffee brings out all of the chocolate notes. And there's some science that talks about why this happens. It's known to chefs and people in the culinary world that coffee has this effect on chocolate. And it's been sort of interesting to explore from our perspective. We don't always get to play with these kind of culinary principles while making bread, and it's fun when we do. The scoring, though, should sort of reflect all of that in some way, make it something that people find visually appealing. So we'll see where we land. I'm still messing with the heart because I think it could be the right way to go. So we're going to do an XOXO. I'm a little worried that it won't open up as well. I thought I was going to go in one line actually, but I ended up having to do it this way. It's hard to actually make a big circle. It's significantly harder to make a little one. all the stuff in this loaf, the chunks of chocolate, also the cherries, they make scoring that much more challenging to navigate. Perfect. Let's load these and see where we land. So if you didn't know, you can bake right on parchment paper in a deck oven. We do this for a number of things, like pretzels are baked this way, but on silpats, not parchment. You just have to be careful to assess whether the parchment can be peeled off later. For bread, it's not really an issue. For something like pretzels, you can't do it on parchment. You need the silpats. But it is nice to know that this is an option for especially smaller items, like if you want to make a whole sheet pan of sticks, like breadsticks, you can just slide the pan or the parchment paper in right with the bread, which is nice. It's going to be a shorter bake time because of the smaller nature of this bread. I wish I could convey the smell in the room right now because, I mean, I know you're going to be visually taken by these, but the smell adds a whole nother layer. It smells so good in here right now. So now I have the parchment to sort of contend with. We'll see the best way to go here. If I can get all 6. Baking this kind of bread does present challenges in judging because, wow, that is precarious. I'm gonna set it down on the cooling rack and then we'll get a closer look and re-examine. It's hard to tell like the color when the base dough is already dark brown. But I don't really want to overdo it on the crust development on this bread. It's meant to be a sweet novelty bread. I think that's why we're baking in the rack oven normally. So kind of erring on the cautious side. See a few of these. Very excited to dig into one of those. Circle with a heart on the inside, not my favorite. The heart turns out nice. We've done that in the past, so I was pretty convinced it would. I think that probably just at a glance is where I would land with these, is to just do the heart. But the X also, as a classic, looks nice. So then we have to make a decision whether we wish to really play to the holiday, even though we're running this all month long for February, or whether we wish to kind of keep it a little bit more timeless. Sort of brand values would be leaning towards the timeless, but the heart does look nice, so I'm sure it will come up for conversation and we'll decide. So these haven't hit the menu yet. They're for internal testing, which today our customers coming in the door will probably smell them and wish for them, but they're not quite for sharing just yet. They'll be live on our menu, I believe, next week. So exciting. Yeah, the simple heart worked out well. Some of the more complicated stuff just got completely abstracted in the bake. But here's a simple heart again. You can see some definition there. Once these cool, we're gonna cut into them. All right, look at this beauty. This one doesn't have any fancy ornamentation or anything, but you can still see the chunks of chocolate and the cherry popping through. It smells great. I baked it soft intentionally, even though I baked it on the deck. On the inside, it's got a bunch of, it just came out of the oven, so super fresh. It's got this kind of melty characteristic to it. Wow. I mean, if I'm being honest, this really holds its own against any pastry or any croissant in our case right now. And given its like limited nature just for 1 month, if I were a proof customer, I would be buying this in place of pastries or in addition to pastries at the very least for the next month. It's so good. It's velvety and has a beautiful depth of flavor. It's not just one sweet note. It's not overly sweet, but just the right amount. The cherries add something amazing to it. The chocolate chunks do their own. It's such a great indulgence of a bread, and that's how it should definitely be viewed. This is like buying a loaf of bread to indulge, just in the pure sense. So without further ado, I'm going to continue to do that. That is excellent. What I like the most about this bread is the velvety nature and the rich chocolate. The cherry just gives it a little bit of brightness and the right kind of balance to the sweetness from the chocolate. That fruity layer is really nice. But what makes us different from the chocolate cherries that we've done in the past, and I think the coffee is very responsible, is the chocolate flavor and even texture is just so much more pronounced through the loaf. It doesn't feel like we simply added chocolate chunks and dried fruit to an otherwise like sourdough. It eats like its own thing in texture and flavor, and it's permeated all the way through. So I don't know what it would remind me of that I can really compare it to, because it's maybe like the best bagel I ever ate in my life that was sweet, but it's different than a bagel in the sense that, you have a full slice that you can enjoy. I think you could go a lot of ways with this. Like on its own, it's an indulgence. With butter, it's an even deeper indulgence. But I could also see like lebne on top to give it a nice extra layer. Really, I hope people are brightening their weeks and putting this into their bread boxes over the next month. Just enjoying a few more sweet moments in their life. It's easiest to score your loaves when they're cold. We eat with our eyes first.
You have to understand your audience enough to be able to say, like, I'm going to be charging a lot of money for my super crazy cool thing, or it's so cool and so creative that only you can do it, and then you don't stand a chance of scaling it.
Let's go over what it's like to build a bakery from one person to many.